Hello, hello. I am so excited. I am very excited. We are live, and I'm looking forward to talking to Jazz first. And my hair looks super red in this lighting. Absolutely loving it. Hello, hello. We are waiting for Jazz to get here, and then we will start. But first off, I just want to say thank you so much to everybody that has helped the awards happen this year. Oh, and I'm going to invite Jazz is here. Oh, here she comes. Hello.
Okay, should I turn my camera on? Hold on.
No, you're good. I know. TikTok's hard. I do lives all the time, and I still don't know what I'm doing.
I'm getting my degree in marketing, and I still don't know.
That's okay. That's okay. It's all good. Hi.
Hello.
Welcome.
Thank you. I'm so excited. Awards. Woohoo.
Awards. And I was just saying, started to how happy I am that things have worked out how they have. And so much of that has to do with the participation of people on this app, because I didn't know what I was doing. I had this idea at 3 a.m. and I said, you know what, let's do it. And so really what made this happen was not at all me, but were the people that came on here and nominated people and voted for people and now are watching this live. So it's really great. It's so cool. And I already made my graphics as well to post tomorrow. So after this, we have the live announcements, and then just for people that missed or people that want to repost, stuff like that, I will be posting on both Instagram and TikTok. So yes, exciting. And now you are from Canada, right?
Yeah, Alberta.
Okay, I don't know how close that is. I don't know how it's going for you air quality wise.
It used to be bad. Like BC is right next to me.
Okay.
If you've heard about that, they always have wildfires, but it's completely fine now. It's just like 30 degrees and I don't have AC, so.
It just hit us here, like in the Midwest, it just hit us. So like, I'm from Michigan. It's a little rough, but we're making do. We're getting through.
I think it hit like 12 like 2 weeks ago, so now the wind is just carrying it over. It's not gonna be good. Yeah.
Exactly. All right, now that we've gathered a lot of people here, I promise we will actually talk about what we came here to talk about. So, Jazz, you're my first guest. I'm very excited to have you here.
Thanks for having me.
And we're going to be talking about the evolution of ACE content, which is exciting. But before we get into the general evolution, I would love to hear your story of not only how you started making ACE content, but how you got involved with consuming ACE content.
Yeah, so I guess I can start with how I started on TikTok. I think I was in high school and it was just kind of the popular thing. So I was just making random stuff. What else do teenagers do? That's it. We just post TikToks. And I don't know, I think, anyone in my actual life who's asexual. And it was this constant battle for me where I wanted people to share my experience or talk about it or help me with, like, what do I do? And they don't know because they don't share the same experience. They don't have the same thought processes as me. So I don't know which one, what I posted first, but I posted something just saying I was asexual. And it blew up somehow. Thank you, TikTok algorithm, for blessing me. And then I just got a lot more comfortable, and I just kind of started saying anything that came to my head into relation to it. As you see my content, it's very like, I want to complain about this today, and I'm confused. And for whatever reason, people could then ask me questions or they could answer my questions. And it was just amazing to find people who shared an experience. And then I started finding other people and connecting with them, and then they could answer my questions and help me kind of figure out what to do and figure myself out. And that was just, it's been so amazing, and it's helped me so much. And I love the whole asexual community on TikTok. It's just my favorite thing.
You know, everyone is lovely, and of course it has its problems. Every community does. But as for, you know, how TikTok communities and fandoms go, we do have a good one. Yeah. We really do. And I think that is a really common trend with a lot of aspec creators on here, is that the way we started was just taking that first leap of faith, really, is just thinking, I'm going to talk about this and I'm going to post a video, and here it is. I'd say the majority of us did not just step into this being like, I'm gonna be an asexual creator.
No, exactly.
That's that's
It's
very much
scary
not.
too. Like you see, um, I didn't know I was asexual when I was younger, but my twin sister thought she was, and she was there for the whole Tumblr mess of it all, and she scared me a lot because there was a lot of hate around asexuals around that time when people were saying it wasn't real. So I was terrified just to deal with that, and thankfully I haven't really, dealt with a super ton of hate where like people are gonna just, you see it and it's terrifying what happens to people. So I'm really glad that I did though, like get onto the right side of TikTok and then have it be so positive.
Right. And I guess that really leads into the big topic of how did we get here? Like, how did we get to the point where we have this TikTok community and this is a thing? And I think the earliest internet experience, I believe, of the ACE community really dates back to AVEN, I think, which for those of you who don't know, the Asexuality, Visibility, and Education Network, which was founded in the early 2000s, which is kind of crazy to think about, even though early 2000s doesn't sound that long ago, in terms of asexual awareness and history, that really is a while ago to have this whole community on the internet. But something that I think is a very stark difference between AVEN and the content we have now is the nuance. Really, when AVEN first came along, they were talking very basic definitions. The first discussions were just about not wanting sex, and now we have this whole different nuanced definition of what being asexual means and the different ways you can be asexual.
No, for sure. And I think when I first found out I was asexual, the first thing that's recommended is Avon because it's so stapled. And I remember seeing the documentary about how it started and them going to Pride, and it's very different than it is now. Obviously, we aren't where I want us to be asexual awareness, but it is still crazy to see how far it's come in. It was before I was born, so it's 22 years old now, which is crazy. And now that we have, spectrums, and because I don't think the original definition of asexuality at this point in my life I would fit into just the baseline, and it's really cool to see people who fit into these little corners and holes of the identity that can relate and share their experiences.
Definitely. And I think a huge reason why we have seen such a boom in people identifying as asexual, especially over the last 5 years, is because we have been able to create those different definitions and that different understanding. And so many more people are seeing, oh, I can be this. This does describe me. As opposed to the original, just not really wanting sex, not really getting what people talk about. And of course, those are great things that are still very and valid and helped us get here, but there's now so much more. And then, of course, kind of addressing what you talked about with your twin, once we moved a little bit from AVEN, we very much moved to Tumblr. With spaces such as Tumblr and Reddit, is that one, they can be very niche. You're not going to have as wide of an audience as you do on TikTok or Instagram. But two, they can be very aggressive.
Yeah,
They're
hate comes from
definitely
ignorance,
not the most
right?
positive places.
Yeah, and most of the hate that I've gotten, even just trying to be on dating apps, is awful, and I get a lot of hate from random people on there. And it's probably similar to what happened in that whole phase of ignorance, and people don't understand what it is. They say this is different from my lifestyle. It happens to every person in the LGBTQ plus community of this isn't how I live. I don't understand it. I'm not going to try to. And I'm glad that we've kind of moved into a more positive. Maybe I'm just biased because all I see is the positivity on TikTok, but it's a lot more positive, I think, now because there is more awareness.
Definitely. And of course, when you are on a platform like TikTok where people tend to be a little bit more open-minded than some other platforms. Of course, you're always going to have the bigots, the people that want to argue, but Tumblr and Reddit are places you go exclusively to argue pretty much. Of course, there's some people that just like to get things about their fandoms, but a lot of users on those apps come there to get into arguments. Whereas on TikTok, I don't think that's the primary goal for the majority of people.
I mean, I'd hope so, right? Sometimes I get into that side of TikTok. I like to avoid it. We see some of the, hateful audios. I remember one, it was in the Andrew Tate kind of brand, and we kind of reclaimed it. And even with I haven't even seen BoJack Horseman, and I feel like a fake, but the audio with that.
So good.
I know, I have,
Because of the asexuality, just because of the whole thing.
right? That's why I want to watch it. I just haven't gotten into it, but even with that audio, reclaiming it, and I love seeing so many people stand up and, and we're not going to be silenced anymore, as we were on these apps where people were just so open with being hateful. And another thing that was before that was recommended to me when I first kind of learned the term was Letters to an Asexual on YouTube. If you've heard of it, it was like 14 years ago, super old, but that was the first kind of thing where I was like, oh, this is a real thing. People experience this, because I didn't think that they did when I was younger, and I just thought there was something wrong with me, really.
Right, and I think YouTube brings up a really, really great point, because I tend to forget about the asexual content on YouTube, but there definitely is a lot of it, and I think a lot of that stemmed from around 2015, 2016. And I think some of it's really great, just it didn't get pushed out there because YouTube is a long format. And I think a lot of times when it's something like asexuality that you're hearing about for the first time and you don't even know how that fits into your life, the long format tends to not really grab people. And I think that's why TikTok had so much more success of building an asexual community than YouTube, because it's short format. It can pull people in. It's quick, and it makes people think, and then they can go and see more if they want.
And the attention span is probably shortening. I remember a couple years ago I heard it was
sure.
3 seconds. There's no way it's probably shorter. So
I know
people,
my attention time, because YouTube videos are too long.
exactly.
I can't sit there for 20 minutes.
But too, I mean, with YouTube, I remember the biggest one was Jaden Animations.
Yes.
When they came out, I saw it everywhere, and I was so happy to see that too, because somebody who has such a big platform and build it off of that could bring awareness, and I think that helped a lot to like educate a lot of people. So I think YouTube is helpful in the sense of when it's larger platforms. I know Anthony Padilla did a video on it, Jubilee did some stuff on it. So I think when they already have that platform and then they use it to spread awareness, it's going to help, but it's not going to build a community.
Definitely. And even with TikTok, if we narrow into TikTok now, I think there has been so much change from when we first started making asexual TikToks. Because in the beginning, when you talk about asexuality on TikTok, it's either the basic definition or it's memes. There was none of this nuanced conversation happening. It was talking about cake and dragons and garlic bread and maybe the occasional not experiencing sexual attraction. And it was those same jokes repeated over and over and over again. Whereas now, we still have those things and they're great, but we have so many other things. We talk about the issues and the complex concepts. And we have so many new ideas that you see every single day, because there are so many people that have different life experiences and are ready to talk about them. And then there are so many other people that are ready to hear them.
Yeah, and with the boom, as you said, of aromantics and asexuals, I think a lot of it is people being more accepting, at least the younger generation, of LGBTQIA+. I taught a YouTuber camp at my work, and one of the kids, who's about 10 years old, told me he's asexual, and I was shocked, right? I never met someone, and there's this 10-year-old who's telling me that he is, and I'm like, wow, it's happening. They're populating everywhere. And I can't say it's attributed to TikTok that he found out, but I can see people in my comments, and I'm sure yours too, who are just realizing that they are. And I think it's because, first of all, of the kind of aura that this community has created of acceptance within everyone. And I lost my train of thought, but yeah.
And I think a lot of it is from TikTok. Just, I mean, like you said, looking at the comments, how many people have you had say on your videos, oh, you helped me realize this. Your videos made me realize that I am this, or that I am this micro label, or that I experienced this thing. That is everywhere. And that's just the people that say it. You know, so many more people don't comment on videos or don't interact that much. Even myself included, a big reason I found out I was aromantic was because of TikTok before I had started making my own. And I never made comments or told the creators that I loved that they were the ones that helped me. I did later on, because now they're my mutuals and they're my friends. But before that, when I didn't know them, I never voiced that. And I'm sure there's so many people out there that are feeling that same thing that have just never said it out loud. So I'm sure TikTok has made a big impact.
For sure, and even with all identities, I think because there's so much more education and openness to education, and as I would now I remember my train of thought from earlier, because TikTok is a younger demographic typically, I think it can reach those kids who are more open to learning about it and more open to accepting it about themselves instead of, if we think about don't ask, don't tell era, I feel like that's still kind of a thing, especially for asexuality. So moving into it where people are more open about their sexuality, open to even talking about sexual experiences in general. It's not so taboo. I think that is a very powerful thing. And that's another thing that we're fighting against is I know my parents and friends that I have, they don't like to talk about sex. And as asexuals, not that we need to talk about sex specifically, but having conversations surrounding sexual attraction makes a lot of people uncomfortable because they don't like to talk about sex in general. So I think having this open dialogue where people can feel comfortable talking about it on TikTok is very important.
Right, and I would even argue that TikTok itself did kind of help make the way for our generation to be so open because not even just within asexuality or aromanticism, you see discussions about sex and sexual experiences on TikTok that people can learn from that could never exist on other social media platforms. You just don't find it. And that's why I think TikTok's creation and the way it blew up was the perfect storm to create this asexual community that we now have.
Oh, completely. And I mean, I had Musically back in like
Of
2016, and if
course.
I think about it, that would never be a thing.
No.
People talking about and like forming these communities, it was just I was just making dance videos lip syncing to Melanie Martinez, right? And while TikTok still has that side, I think the fact that it was able to become this powerful and for even so many other communities is so incredible. And again, I remember I cried like a couple weeks ago just at the fact that I found it and that it exists and I'm a part of it is just so incredible. And that TikTok has created it makes me so happy.
Right, and something I do have to give a hand to the TikTok creators, the people running TikTok. Even though we give them a lot of crap for the algorithm and suppressing certain things, all of that, we have to hand it to them that they do not block content and ideas and self-expression nearly as much as any other social media platform. Like, the way that they run their app is the reason that we are able to build these communities. And so I do think we have to give some credit where credit is due. Yes, the algorithm can be a little wonky, but overall, it allows us to have these discussions and to build these relationships.
Yeah, and I mean, the next thing too that I think is really important, as I see some asexual creators talking about, is still TikTok is suppressing people of color, as has happened, as was mentioned in Congress. And for me, I know my content is a lot. I talk about myself, but I think we're also moving in that, and I see a lot of asexual creators trying to do it as we're trying to, cover all of our bases, fight everything. But I do think it's an important thing to mention, as I do think we are inclusive and I see people try to be inclusive, it's still something to, keep in the top of your head and recognize.
Sure, and that will definitely be a discussion later on in this live. We're going to have a diversity chat, future of how we handle all of that, and we'll definitely be talking about not only some of the issues in the community, but ways we can help remedy those issues and support aspec creators from different backgrounds. That will definitely be a conversation because, like you said, it's so important. And while we are better than many communities in that aspect, we are not perfect, and we do still have our issues. Yes, and definitely, I mean, everybody said, yes, Cam said TikTok gets this one W, and it's true. We definitely, we're hard on TikTok. We're hard on TikTok, and for many good reasons. But I think it's also important to appreciate that TikTok is the reason we're all here, and it's created a lot of very good things.
Yeah, and I hope it doesn't get banned.
right. Even though I get
Where are we gonna go?
But the thing moving forward is we've already come such a long way in just a couple years. I cannot even imagine how much more ACE content is going to change over the next few.
Yeah, and how many new people are going to feel more comfortable posting and don't feel like either that we're pressuring you, saying that you have to. But I think the fact that more and more, I see more and more people show up, more and more people are suggested to me, and the fact that people are just more open about talking about their experience it's just so, it's helpful to me, and I'm sure it's helpful to everyone else as somebody who I attached myself to Disney movies as a kid. I would see it and be like, that's not how my life is going to work. And I'm okay with that, but I struggled to kind of know how to act, right? I don't know what to do in this situation because I haven't seen people who act in this situation like this. So I think hearing about people's experiences helps me and helps everyone. So thank you again.
In a world where you have never been represented, TikTok represents you. And
Exactly.
That's just a fact.
Yeah.
And yes, it is 7:20, so I think it was great to talk to you, and it's time to announce the winners of Best Asexual Creator, and also, since there's no live audience chat, you guys got to go wild. All right, go ahead, Jazz. It's all you.
Okay. The winners for Best Ace Creator are, in no particular order, acedadadvice, Lynn2the and finch.aves. Congratulations!
Congratulations, everyone. And I'll be posting very cute graphics tomorrow if anybody wants to repost on their story. Yes. All right. Thank you so much, Jazz. This was great. Great conversation and great time. Of course. And I hope you have just a great night, great rest of your Pride Month.
You too. I'll keep watching. I'll see you in the chat.
Perfect.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.
All right. And now we're all ready for Cam. Of course, Cam is going to be excited because this is probably the first time that I'm actually going to stay on topic. So, Cam, I'm assuming you're in the chat. You can request. That's my assumption. We're just seeing. Let's see. You'll keep me on topic? All right, Cam, can you go ahead and request? I think that should be an option for you. Oh, I see. Accept. All right, it's connecting. Here we go. Hi.
Hello.
Sorry, I'm not used to having to go at the bottom now to get requests because it used to pop up on your screen.
I know, there's so many different buttons.
Yes. So yes, I know. It's a miracle. This is like the first live stream in my entire life where I'm staying professional. It's a special treat for Cam. So, hi, Cam. Hope you've been having a great Pride Month since we last spoken.
It has been overall pretty good, and I hope yours has as well.
Yes,
Trust me,
for sure.
I have many notes. It will be on topic.
Yes, and this is actually a really exciting topic to stay on because we're going to be talking about the rise of AroTalk. And I thought this was a great topic for you in particular because you've been on TikTok a long time, longer than I have, and so I feel like you kind of witnessed this in real time.
Yeah, no, I was definitely there for all of the big old parts, though definitely the ones I want to talk about.
Yeah, for sure.
But before getting into any of that, I do want to make a certain note that I think it's a good reminder for everyone, and it's that these communities, especially online, their visibility isn't really defined by how big they are, it's just how loud they're being. So often you will have these communities that are actually filled with tons of people, but you just won't hear anything because nothing loud is happening from them. So I think that's important to keep in mind. If you want to see more of your community, don't be afraid to speak up every now and again because it just adds to that volume that is what defines what gets seen.
Definitely. And when it's a platform like TikTok with the algorithm, sometimes all it takes is one person, one video. Like, really, it's that simple. And I think the rise of AroTalk is a really great example of that because for the longest time, there was no Aro content, and I mean none.
Yes. The Aro community has always existed on TikTok, but definitely in that fairly unknown sort of way. You would almost have to go up your way to search for it, and even then it would take a while for you to find it. But to prove that it hasn't been there, just a little fun fact that to kind of prove that point that we have gotten a chance to be louder recently is a fun fact about my following list is that the oldest account that I followed that I am now mutuals with, not my first mutual, but the first account I followed that now follows me back, was actually Melting Down, who you definitely wouldn't associate with asexual content or anything, but Aromanticism, it's
no, not at all.
Since I joined the app.
Wow. That's crazy, and I love Melting Down. If you guys have not checked out Melting Down, please do. They have absolutely fantastic content talking about loveless aromantics and other topics like that. They're incredibly nuanced, incredibly unique. So definitely go check them out. Yeah, that's crazy. I didn't even realize they'd been around for that long.
Oh yeah, definitely.
And yes, I know, just said in the chat, your audio is a little wonky, Cam, but if you can't fix it, it's
I'm
okay.
doing what I can.
I
I
know
can
you're
take
doing your
off the
best, so it's
headphones, but
okay.
we'll
But
see
just
what
in
it
case you
does.
didn't know, I would bring it up. And I think there are definitely a couple off the top of my head, and maybe you know better, but some people to really accredit the rise of AroTalk to are probably Bucket and don't oh my gosh, do they still go by Fig?
I believe so, and I believe their tag is still Fred Humphrey and Co.
Yes,
I
and actually
believe
your
so.
audio just got so much better, so that's great.
Yeah, it's the headphones. It's a coin
Oh,
flip.
okay. Yeah, and I think
Yeah.
so much of the rise of AroTalk really is accredited to the two of them.
Definitely.
Because they were two people who saw there is an Arrow community, there is an audience. There's just not enough content being produced around this.
Yeah.
And they made it happen. And so much of that is like what Jazz and I were talking about the initiative to take that first step and say, I have something to talk about that's unique. I don't see other people talking about it, or I have something to add to it, so I'm going to do it.
Yeah. They both definitely had that benefit that the Ace and Arrow communities have a huge amount of overlap. A number of reasons, especially considering the origin of the tomes. But it's important that they had that connection in multiple communities, so that way they could take one audience, and if they happen to be interested in Arrow content as well, give it that little boost. But I think if there was one thing that really helped to make the Arrow part of TikTok be its own thing without being dependent on the asexual part, it's definitely the rise of the hashtag AroTalk specifically.
Yes.
And that kind of emerged because when it comes to making content on social media, most people are going to use as many relevant tags as they can. But that sometimes means you use tags that aren't actually relevant, they just will help with the search numbers. And some people aren't doing that on purpose, and some people are just genuinely doing it because they think that's the correct thing to do. But it meant that there was a lot of content about asexuality, maybe not even about asexuality, and it was being tagged with Aromantic content. It was general interest, so it was getting the most views. So stuff that was more in depth just wasn't getting the attention it deserved. And that's why Fig really pushed for a bunch of Arrow creators to start using the AroTalk hashtag.
Yeah, and now it's a staple. I feel like I've always used it in my videos, and I see Aromantic creators always using it in their videos. So to think that there was a time that that wasn't a thing and that had to be created is crazy, because it's the norm now.
Yeah. And again, even before then, the Arrow community was still there. It was still its own thing. I remember in 2021 for Arrow Week, a bunch of Arrow creators made short clips basically to celebrate it. Bucket posted it on his Arrow page. And that was all before that tag really took off. So the community's been there. It really is just once you have that event that you basically hold up a loudspeaker to yourself and you announce you're representing this community, that is when they really get the visibility they deserve and need.
Definitely. And I will say the Aromantic tag itself has improved a bit. It's not great, but it's a bit better because, like you said before, there would be no Arrow content under it. And now, yes, the top ones are general pride things or asexual things, but you can find quite a bit of content under the Aromantic tag that is actually Aromantic content.
Oh, definitely.
And that is great. That's a really great improvement.
Yeah.
And
So
I think another thing, kind of like what you were saying, is, and this came a little bit later, I think, is the separation of aromantic talk from asexual talk. Because I think in the beginning, a lot of times, even if you had your own aromantic content, it was very much tied to asexuality. It felt like a subsection of asexuality. Yeah. Whereas now you have plenty of aspec creators that talk about aromanticism and only aromanticism, and they have an audience of people that want to hear about just aromanticism, not aromanticism on the side while hearing about asexuality.
No, definitely. There will be random videos on the For You page now bringing up amatonormativity and breaking that down, and you wouldn't get that unless it was from an asexual lens 2-3 years ago. It just wouldn't happen.
Right.
And yes, Paul, that's my own algorithm, but really, I've been looking at Arrow content since the beginning. It wasn't there.
Right, and I think a really big, even though this was a lot more recent, something that really, really stood out to me as a marker of where we were going in the direction of AroTalk was MK, when unknownplanet.pdf started content, that really, really stood out to me because MK not only makes great content and talks all about aromanticism, but grew very quickly. It's like they started and a month later they had 20K followers. And I think that just shows that we are in a place now where we're ready for that nuance and people want to hear it. Whereas you go back a couple years, there might have been people making similar content, but they never really got that audience interaction.
Yeah, MK is a very good example of sort of how the Aromantic community has also become more visibly diverse in terms of it's not just asexual with Aromantic on the side. Maybe sometimes Aromantic will be the focus, but not always. Now you can see so many different people sharing their experiences. What are they partnering Aromantic? What are they an asexual Aromantic? What are they sharing other experiences from Aromanticism, just talking about the theory behind it specifically. You wouldn't get that before, and now you have so many different ways people are expressing this relatively niche queer identity. And if you go looking for it, you'll find it everywhere in a million different flavors.
Right, and speaking of diversity, I think there's actually been a significant increase over the last couple of years of racial diversity when you are looking at Arrow Talk creators. Because for the longest time when you were looking at Arrow TikToks, it was white creators and it was only white creators. And I think if you look at the last year, I've been seeing quite a few, not as many as I would like because the algorithm and all of those things. But still, I have been seeing quite a few people of color making aromantic content. And I have never seen that before this past year.
Oh, definitely. No. Even you get, how am I trying to say this? Some of the best videos I've seen breaking down certain aspects of these topics like heteronormativity have been people of color, specifically Black people, just saying, hey, here's the thing that's going on. Let's examine it. Not worrying about all of this preface about it, talking about the asexuality and aromanticism. No, here's a topic that is getting enough visibility to be able to talk about. I'm going to take that brave step and just take a deep dive into it. And it's great that people of not even just race, just if it's definitely where you would a non-binary person who looks fairly binary gendered, some were masculine, some were feminine, but you wouldn't see very many that had a fairly androgynous look. You would see a fairly acceptable looking white person just talking about the definition of aromanticism, and that would be it. And now there's just so much more.
There's so much more, and it's great to be getting that in different communities, especially when we talk about different cultural backgrounds, which I think is a big thing that aromanticism has seeped into recently. And that is so great because some cultures and some backgrounds maybe aren't as progressive with queer topics, or they just don't have that kind of education, or that's not part of their culture, that's not talked about. And so the fact that that is kind of, the awareness is spreading to those groups, and now those people are making content and showing anybody that has a background like them that is a possibility is just so great.
No, definitely. And if you're into other cultures, there's not only some that are generally less progressive, but being able to have a voice they otherwise want to have, but also having access to cultures that aren't as dependent on the nuclear family as American and Western culture in general are. Right. You don't see this too much, but that emphasis on non-traditional family structures really ties into the discussion about aromanticism a lot, because so much of how we understand it is through this. You are expected to get married to one person on your own terms at some point, and that's just not how it is for a huge chunk of the world.
Right, definitely. And even with that, when we talk about the way that awareness can be pushed out to other countries, I think that aromanticism has really been on the docket of people that live in other places now, because it used to be such a westernized thing and the resources just weren't out there. But with TikTok, it's world. Of course, there are bans and there are exceptions and all of those things. But in general, because we are talking about it on a platform like this one, it is reaching more places where these discussions aren't as openly talked about, or maybe haven't been thought about before. And that is what's so cool about this platform, is that it does have such a wide reach. It's not just your country or the neighboring country. It's the whole world.
Yeah. And to touch on a little bit of what you and Jazz talked about oil, if this was being done on YouTube, it couldn't be as overreaching as it is, because with YouTube, you get the occasional random person, but it's very much people who are somewhat familiar with you. They're going to come back for you specifically. And that's not how TikTok works. TikTok, a lot of social media are kind of in this, you get what you get, but definitely TikTok is so focused on, we're going to show you things we think you like, but we have no idea if you will or not. And so that really helps just bolster the idea of, hey, you're interested in aromantic stuff. Here's something that's kind of related to aromanticism. I have no idea if you like this, but take a look at it. And it could be something that at the time has 10 views, and all of a sudden you just found one of your favorite creators.
Right. And with that being said, with the related things they will show you, that's how so many people end up finding out about aromanticism, because let's say they know they're asexual, or they know that they are some other type of LGBTQ plus identity. The algorithm could say, okay, you like videos about this identity, let's try an aromantic one. All of a sudden, you are hearing about this new thing, and maybe that kind of describes you and you want to learn more about it. That wouldn't really happen on YouTube or other platforms.
Exactly.
That is a very TikTok specific thing, and that's why I think TikTok is such a wonderful place despite its flaws. And like Jazz and I were talking about, it's why it happened here and now. It couldn't have happened on any other social media platform.
Right. You had things on Tumblr where the world will just pop up if you follow enough queer tags. You're going to find out about it at some point. But it's nowhere near the same thing that happens here.
Exactly. And that's why we've just had so much growth. And I think, we were debating, has TikTok caused the surge of asexuals over the last few years? And maybe it has, maybe it hasn't. But I think with aromanticism, TikTok has 100% caused the surge of people identifying as aromantic over the last few years.
Yeah, I would agree.
TikTok. It has.
Yes.
That's
because
centralized.
Because everywhere else, unless you're going to or you're going to a subreddit dedicated to it, it's always going to be a subnote, just because it has to be at this point in time. Most people's introduction to the idea of a romantic orientation at all is by looking at the definition of aromantic. You can't find it. You can't find it on a whim on most platforms.
Not at all. And even a lot of those platforms just don't have as much content, especially the pride in general type accounts. We've gotten to a point where any sort of LGBTQ plus account talks about asexuality a little bit. But so many of them do not even touch on aromanticism. They just don't talk about it. And so a lot of times when the mainstream pride things are what is being broadcasted on those other platforms, you're not going to see aromanticism because those people aren't talking about it. And so it's kind of like what you said, there could be a video at 10 views and you see it on TikTok. That is why it essentially works, because the mainstream people aren't talking about this. But on TikTok, you don't have to be mainstream to be heard.
Exactly. Yeah. And like you said, this platform is not without its faults. There are so many. But the one thing it does is that it gives that megaphone to more people. It says, hey, your community, there's a lot of people here. If you get to speak up today. Does it happen more often? Probably. But it does get to happen, and that's more often than it has been for the past 15 years, in all honesty, of this community being able to have a voice.
Exactly. And if you look at the growth on TikTok or really any platform over the last 3 years, with how aromanticism is discussed, people identifying as it, and think about 3 years from now, absolutely incredible. So much has happened and so much can happen.
I can remember trends of people taking the audio from an aromantic person just talking about a topic and making jokes about how it's Tumblr language. That has happened since I have been on TikTok. Yeah. And now most people who are at all associated with the aspec community know that there is an aromantic presence on TikTok.
Yes, and even when you go to the general queer space on TikTok, there is a lot more respect for aromanticism.
You will see the random cake decorations, the random painting here and there, and it's way more often than it just being included in the corner.
Definitely. And yeah, like I said, I just can't wait. The rise has been very quick and very incredible, and I can't wait to see where it keeps going. I just think it's so exciting. It really is the one word I'm thinking of is just exciting. It's exciting that our community has been able to gain this much traction and is going to continue to gain this much traction. And now it is 7:40, so I believe it is time to announce the winners of Best Aromantic Creator.
It is. And from this envelope, that is definitely not empty, and I'm definitely not just reading from a notepad document on the screen in front of me.
I have a paper, so I'm not just looking down at nothing.
Yeah, but from definitely the envelope. From definitely the envelope, I hope I got these names correct. It would be very awkward if I didn't.
All right.
There are 2 winners for Best Arrow Creator, and they are abitheace and unknownplanet.pdf.
Yes, perfect.
Yay.
Congratulations to our winners and a gold star for my friend Pam.
Thank you. Both fantastic creators. I'm so glad to see that they win.
Yes. And as always, Cam, it's a delight to talk to you. I mean, you're one of the people I talk to the most on live, and you're one of my favorites to talk to. Even when we talk serious and not just shenanigans.
It's true. Thank you for the compliments. It was an honor to be invited.
Yes, definitely. Okay. I'm sure you'll be in my chat, so this is not formally goodbye. But
I get to take off the tie now.
It's been great, and I will see your beautiful face later.
All right. Talk to you later.
All right. Should I make an Arrow song? Yes, you should make an Arrow song. Always. In fact, if you're looking for Arrow music, Grace Wolf is an Arrow creator on here that makes Arrow songs, Ace songs, so definitely check that out. All right, Abby. Abby, my friend, please request to join. Abby! Hello?
Hi. I don't know if you can see me. Okay.
I can.
Is that right?
There
Okay,
you are.
there we go.
Hello.
I don't know if I've guested on somebody else's. I've co-hosted lives before.
Right.
I don't know if I've ever
a little bit
guested.
different. But
Yeah.
First off, congratulations, because one of our winners of Best Aromantic Creator.
Thank you. Hello, everyone in the chat. Thank you for.
Like I said, a cute little graphic tomorrow that you can repost on Instagram. It's cute.
I definitely will. Okay.
I may or may not have been making them on the clock today, but you know.
I mean, there was a little bit of a suspicious message. I'm not gonna lie. When you're like, "Can you?"
Okay.
Oh.
I did reach out to Abby and ask for a picture because somehow I just couldn't find one that I could use, and it's crazy because out of all like 15 winners, you were actually the only person I had to reach out to for a picture. So I'm glad I didn't have to do that with anybody else, because I knew in the moment, I was like, this is suspicious. This is a little weird. But yeah,
honestly,
everyone else either had a picture on their Instagram or they had a video where I could screenshot and it was like a good enough setup that I could edit it in. But yeah, yours, I was like, I could have found something, but it would have done you dirty. And I was like, I don't want to do Abby dirty. I'll just text him. But yes, hello. Welcome.
Hello. I'm going to give a disclaimer that my reception has not been 100%. So if something weird happens, I'm terribly sorry. And also another disclaimer, I am here to talk about inclusion of aloe arrows in the community, but I myself am AroAce and not aloe arrow. I did consult an aloe arrow before I prepped for this, though, so just for everyone's reference.
That is a disclaimer that I did want to give, because while I do have aloe arrow mutuals, a lot of them were either not available or they just aren't on TikTok a lot, so they weren't really somebody that was super accessible. So I did think Abby would be a good choice because, like she said, they know people, actually roommates, right, that are aloe arrow roommates.
My roommate and kind of QPR partner. It's a long story. We're not labeling things.
Abby is a very, very good choice. Probably the best choice outside of an actual aloe arrow. So that is very, very important to bring up. And I am so excited to talk about this topic. I gotta say, this is one of my absolute favorite topics to cover when we talk about aspec nuance. And for those of you who don't know, it's kind of discussing the issue of aloe arrows, so people who are aromantic but not asexual, and their place in the community, the fact that they are not heard as much as other aspecs, and they do not have as much their experiences.
Yeah, exactly. And I guess the main thing that I personally think of when I think of the word inclusion for any label and any identity that's like subjugated by another identity in a minority space is just making room for voices and uplifting instead of over talking. Because a lot of times, especially in the AroAce, aromantic, asexual communities, allo-aros get overshadowed by AroAces, even in the aromantic community, just because there's such a large prevalence of AroAces. There's nothing wrong with that identity whatsoever, but there are such a large number of AroAces compared to allo-aros because I think it's a lot harder to recognize your aromanticism because of amatonormativity and societal pressures and norms when you are aromantic. I had a long conversation with my roommate who was talking about how hard it was for them to realize they were aromantic. They literally only know they're aromantic because they live with me and a creator on here that talks about these things at our dinner table all the time, and it made them come to the realization that they were aromantic while I was coming to my realization that I was aromantic because I live with another AroAce as well. So if you're not in these spaces and having these conversations, it can be a really difficult identity to identify. And so I think trying to uplift those voices and give more light to those people so that more people can identify and realize that this is an option, this is something that exists, this is something that is really important and huge. So that was, I think, what the word inclusion means to me in general, right? Because just making space, showing up, trying to highlight and uplift voices instead of talking over them, which is why I was like, the first thing is first. I am not allo-aro. If there was somebody who was allo-aro, they should be here speaking on this.
Right, exactly. But I know, and that's like I said, guys, I was very, very selective with this. I wanted to make sure appropriate people were talking about these topics, and that's why I consulted Abby. I made sure Abby would be comfortable talking about this topic, and obviously I know she's very knowledgeable, would do her research. So that was definitely an important thing when I was finding people to talk about the different topics. And I think connecting to what you said about being able to even discover aromanticism, I think a big reason why there are so many AroAce people compared to allo-aros is because a lot of people discover aromanticism through the asexual community. So they start identifying as asexual, they learn about aromanticism and say, oh, that's me too. Whereas if you're allo-aro, you're going to hear about asexuality, say that's not me, and move on. You're never going to get to that next step. You have to be introduced to aromanticism on its own, and that is kind of a tricky thing to find.
Yes, exactly. So one of the things I wrote down on my also piece of paper that everyone has who's speaking on this was to don't be scared to educate people on aromanticism in general, and don't be afraid to speak out about your aromanticism. I know a lot of aromantic folks have internalized arophobia that we struggle with. Everybody does. I don't think with the societal pressures and amatonormativity, it can be really hard sometimes, and you at different times in your life, you know, where you're really struggling with your aromantic identity because it can feel really isolating and lonely at points. And just because there's all this societal pressure to have a family, get married, have kids, all of this compounds on aromanticism because there's this societal need for love, like romantic love is in every form of media. I don't think I've ever watched a movie that doesn't have a love story in it. I was thinking about it. I don't think I can think of a single one when I was prepping for this. Can you think of one? Because
oh my gosh,
even the crazy action movies who are like about war heroes or about anything, there's always a wife, someone loving them back home. It's always a struggle for this, and it's so centered in all of media that there's never any conversation.
I'd have to really sit down and list out every single movie I've ever watched to even potentially come close to finding something.
Right, like maybe the first movie ever made, I've seen that, which is like the train coming through the station because it freaked audiences out. But even that, you know what I mean? Because everything in life is love and romance. And so I think that's really difficult for allo-aros to ever want to accept their identity. And it makes it hard for AroAces and other aromantic people who are aspec in some way to come out and speak on their aromanticism because there is this internalized arophobia that is just so subjugated in society, you know?
Yeah, and that bias is definitely there. You know, pretty much every AroAce person talks about asexuality more, even when you try not to. Like, I put in effort to try to make my content on asexuality and aromanticism equal, and I still find myself making more ace content.
Yes, no, it's definitely, it's something that everyone falls into. Yeah, absolutely. I remember noticing it really harshly because I realized my aromanticism a little bit before Aromantic Awareness Week a couple years ago, and I decided to do a big art project for it where I made like a piece of art centering aromantic folks' ideas and what they associate with their identity and like symbolism. And while I was doing this project, I interviewed a bunch of different aromantic people, mostly my friends on TikTok, about what they associate with their aromantic identity and like symbolism and that kind of thing. But I remember posting all kinds of stuff for Aromantic Awareness Week, and then the very next week, I didn't see a single thing that was aromantic on anyone's stories, on anyone's feeds. The whole time that week, all aromantic. As soon as that week was over, full asexual. I didn't see a single arrow thing anywhere, which was just really disheartening to me. And I do feel like I've seen the shift that you and Cam were talking about, where aromanticism is being spoken about more, and I've seen it more in posts and things outside of those specific times for aromanticism, but I still think there needs to be more education and uplifting of arrow voices in general.
Definitely, and I think there needs to be more intentional effort to include allo arrow voices. We can't just expect it to happen. We need to go out of our way as allo aces or arrow aces to make that happen. And a lot of that connects this on my about a million times, but I will bring up really quickly my aspec trickle down theory, which I've talked about, which I still love to this day. I think it says a lot about our society and our community with aspecs. The sad truth is that things that are more palatable to society are going to get more awareness, are going to have more education surrounding them, and we as aspecs kind of lean into them because ultimately our goal is to be accepted and to be included in society. And sometimes that means we favor one identity over the other if it helps us out. And so you find that asexual spaces over the last few years have really been taken over by allo aces because allos who are now learning about asexuality seem really attached to that idea that aces can still love.
Yes, absolutely.
So like mainstream, when you're talking about asexuality, is so attached to the fact that you can love without sex. They just don't feel sexual attraction, but they can still love. So attached to that now the asexual community has kind of been overrun by allo aces. And that makes arrow aces feel like they don't really have a place. So they start taking over the arrow community because they feel, well, if the asexual community isn't representing me, I can be represented here. The problem with that is that then ends up pushing out allo arrows, especially because arrow aces are the next most acceptable thing. Because people think, well, at least you don't feel any attraction and, you don't want any traditional relationship. At least it's nothing. Whereas allo arrows, they think, you just are messing with people, or like, how could you want sex but no romance? That is just baffling and has so many demonic undertones to mainstream culture that simply aren't true.
Yeah.
So a lot of it is because of the way our society functions and because of the way we as humans function, we are actively allo arrows. The only way we can remedy that is to actively bring them back in and make space for them.
Yes, I absolutely agree. And I think we also need to push back against allo aces a little bit and reclaim some of that asexual space for arrow aces so that we don't feel like we need to take over the aromantic space quite so much. Because I really think that phrase can be harmful for everybody. I don't think it's just harmful for allo arrows. I think it's harmful for arrow aces. I think it's harmful for aces in general because it also is like, it's okay, this is bad, but I'm still okay. I'm still human. I think it's like harmful across the board.
An excuse. It is 100% an excuse, and it is demonizing your asexuality. And it is saying, this is my redeeming quality. I have this, exactly. This is what redeems me. When it's like, no, asexuality is a thing to celebrate. Aromanticism is a thing to celebrate. And you don't need an excuse. And you shouldn't, honestly, we shouldn't be giving society an excuse. Because if you ride on those coattails by saying aces can still love, you're not really being accepted for who you are. Because you're not being true to yourself.
Exactly. I think I'm a loveless arrow ace too, so I have a little bit stronger opinion on all this than most people probably would. I'm still coming to terms with that identity myself. I don't fully use it. I haven't made TikToks about it yet, but it's certainly something that I really hold close to my heart. Of love doesn't make us human. That's not what defines humanity. That's not what makes us hold value to one another. That's not what forms community. That's not what forms connection. Care is the word I like to use, because when you care about someone, you show up for them, you support them, you help them. You don't have to love someone to do those things and to be a good person.
Right. And That is another topic. I love talking about loveless arrows for a really interesting reason is that it's such a different experience from what I lead. Because for me, I know for a fact I am not a loveless arrow. I feel like I feel love very deeply. And kind of like what you're saying about how you can care for somebody without loving them, I tend to kind of in a negative way experience the opposite where I might love somebody, but that doesn't mean that I'm caring for them in the way that I should. And that doesn't mean that I'm dealing with that friendship, and I might love somebody, but I might be creating a very toxic relationship with them. And so that is how I know personally that I am not loveless, but that is exactly why I am so intrigued and love to talk about and support loveless arrows, because it is so different from my life experience, and yet it is on the same spectrum that I am on. And it's so different, and it really just defies everything society expects from us. So anybody that can, come out and be proud about being a loveless arrow, I seriously, seriously applaud you, because that is hard. It really is difficult, but it's very important. And it's not just important in defining yourself, but in defining humanity. And saying what makes us human. Is it really this? So definitely, like I said, loveless aromanticism is a very, very important thing to talk about. And I think it's really shifting the way we look at people.
Yeah, I think so too. I would agree, because it's not, we don't need to center love in everything. Like, yes, love is a key component to many people's lives, but it doesn't need to be a key component to everyone's life. It's not this central experience that really defines humanity. I think there's lots of things that could define humanity. The use of tools, right? Walking on 2 feet. Like, genetically, we are distinct from other things, and love is no part of that. There is nothing about love in our DNA that's been proven. We don't need to get into any of this, but that's why I really think we need to fight against AroAces in their use of this phrase, because it is truly harmful for everyone. It's making them seem like demonize their own asexuality. It's demonizing aromanticism. It's just across the board a bad thing. And I don't think that I even disagree with the love is love for pride, because
it doesn't encompass half of the community.
It doesn't encompass most of the, I would say. Because it's just harmful across the board, because you can be bisexual, aromantic, you know what I mean? There's so many different identities, and then it would just skip over.
Gender identities too.
Exactly.
Gender identity, you could be trans, but you could be straight or things like that, and that just doesn't encompass it either.
Absolutely. So.
Definitely. And I think also something really important that I plan to make more videos on in the future is deconstructing the meaning of love and how we view love, because we see love as an inherently good thing. And I don't think it is. Like I said, the amount of toxic situations that I had because of love, because of obsession, because of admiration, I think was really harmful to myself and honestly a lot of other people. And I don't think that love is always this glorious thing. I think love can be very, very dangerous. And when we start to look at love as a morally gray concept, instead of the best thing you could possibly think of, we start to appreciate the aromantic experience more. Because love is just like any other thing or any other emotion. There are good things and there are bad things.
Yeah, I would definitely agree. Love is a neutral experience, not a morally good or morally bad. And I definitely think if we can move away from this from the use and centralization of love in terminology and in reference to both the asexual community and the queer community at large, I think it'll really help bring aloe arrows into more spaces where they'll feel more comfortable to share and have more room to speak on things. Because when we center love, it really just cuts out the aloe arrows from the entire conversation.
Right. And one thing I do want to address before we wrap up is ways to find some aloe arrow creators or loveless arrow creators. And I think it's what Cam talked about those niche arrow hashtags. Or you go under aloe arrow or gray arrow or loveless arrow, tags like that. You can definitely find a lot of arrow creators that make arrow exclusive content. And I did that recently, and I think I added like at least 5 new creators to my following list that are loveless arrow or aloe arrow, things like that I had never heard of before just by going under those tags.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a million amazing tags, and I would encourage you all to check out different arrow videos on Cam's page, your page, my page. I have videos too, lots of pages, Unknown Planet's page. There's a million amazing arrow creators out there that would be awesome to follow and watch and highlight. And something that I would encourage any of the creators in the chat, because I know there's a ton of creators chat, is repost Aloe Arrow videos. Just do it. It's easy. It's on TikTok. Just repost them, and then that highlights them. That's a really easy thing we can all do in the day-to-day. Even if you're not a creator, you can repost videos, and it just brings more awareness to the video.
You interact with is going to see that. I see things that my friends have reposted all the time, so it really does work.
Absolutely.
All right, and now I believe it is time to announce the best AroAce creators. And I do want to say I bent the rules a little bit for this one, because the rules I set was that there was going to be one person per 5 nominees, and if there was a tie, I would break it, which I did do for some, but for the 2 that were tied for this one, I really couldn't choose. They both make very different content, and they both make fantastic content, and I just love them both, and I didn't really think it was fair for me to go either way. So we will have 3 winners for this one instead of 2. I bent the rules a little bit, but I think it was a necessary situation to bend the rules.
Absolutely. Right. And they're all fabulous creators. So drum roll, I guess. The winners are Alypasta, or Andrew, Ace with Grace, and Asexeducation, or Aubrey. So congratulations if you're here. If not, no worries. I'm sure you will find out in tomorrow's lovely post about it. So congrats to all. Lovely speaking with you. I can't wait to see the rest of the speakers.
Definitely. Thank you so much for all of your insight. Tell your roommate I said hi.
Okay, I will.
This was great. Thank you so much, Abby.
Yeah, have a great one.
Yes. Goodbye. All right, and next I will be chatting with Sarah, ace.scicomm. I do want to say a little bit of what happened. I was originally going to have Moose on here to talk about diversity and representation within the aspec community. Moose.x3, if you don't know of them, please go check them out. They have done so many wonderful things, especially talking about the inclusion of Black asexuals. They've even done projects with Yasmin Benoit before. Lots of cool things. Unfortunately, they are currently not in their native country, and so the time zone was just very off, and it didn't end up working out. So I do have ace.scicomm here to do 2 segments with me, which I really, really appreciate. And I will go in and invite. I just sent the invite, so she should be here momentarily. Oh, it's loading. Exciting. Hello.
Hi. I don't know why. Oh, wait, there's a camera button. I've never done.
Yes, you gotta put the camera on, I know.
Yeah, I've never done a TikTok live before, so I'm just a bit like, oh, this is interesting.
And guys, I got to admit that I did with Sarah the thing I do with 90% of aspec creators, because I'm a little American, is I assumed Sarah was American, and then I looked at time zones and I was like, oh, I was so wrong on this, because if I don't know, if I haven't, even though I've heard you talk, like I just forgot. Like that's my little USA centered brain, is I was like, yeah, there happens all the time. Happens all the time.
Do I need to have like a posher English accent when I do my videos? Is that what I need to do?
Like that's just so embarrassing, because at least some creators that I don't realize, they never post talking videos. Like the Ace lady had never posted a talking video, and then she finally posted one, and that's how I found out. And so I was like, oh, okay, at least she's never posted a talking video, so there was no way for me to really know. But with you, there is no excuse. Like, I'm just silly goofy. Yeah, so props to Sarah for doing this so late. What is it, like midnight for you?
It is 1 a.m. Can I tell you a funny anecdote just related to this, actually? Yeah. So in my family, so pretty much all of like my immediate family live in the US in several different states. It's just me and my mum here out of like her side of the family. And I went to my cousin's bachelorette several years ago, and it was like a murder mystery thing at their apartment, and the murder mystery had already started. I'd arrived with another cousin, and we got into character and all that kind of stuff. The murder mystery ended, and then I was speaking to my cousin's friends, who then went, wait, you're actually English? That is your real accents? I'm like, yes. Have I just had a like
on a show?
Yeah, but I was like, do I have a fake English accent? Is that what I've had all these years? And that's why they thought I wasn't actually English. But yeah, So
It's
that
lovely.
particular thing.
It really is lovely.
Like,
I do love your accent, and I'm not just like, I know there's, once again, playing into the American stereotype, there's so many Americans that like love every, you know, European accent, but I actually am not typically one of those people. I'm selective. So I love yours a lot. So
thank
I know
you,
it
thank
probably
you. I would say there's a
here, but it just
there's
rolls
a
off
this
the tongue. It's lovely.
Thank you. Well, I say there's a broad range of really very, very cool accents in the UK. Mine is what's called received pronunciation, or RP. It is a regionless accent. There is no region to it. So that's what we call, yeah, received pronunciation, which is what I speak. Yeah.
I have a feeling that out there you guys really put more tact into labeling your accents than we do over here.
Oh, really?
Like the accents over here are yeehaw and nasalized.
Okay.
And I get made fun of, but it's so funny because I've lived in Michigan my whole life. I always have known people from the Midwest. I never got made fun of for my accent until this year because my best friends at school are from the East Coast. And so I constantly get made fun of. A big one is choir. When I say choir, I get made fun of because like choir, like it's really wide, or like stats. And I thought things I would get made fun of are like pop or suckers. No, they don't make fun of me for that. They make fun of me for my wide vowels. And I'm like, okay.
That's
it's
interesting.
Fair.
Oh,
it's fair.
Whereas my cousins have made fun of me since I can remember, like the way I would say things. There's this thing I said when I was like 6 years old, right? And it was, I think somebody was like, I don't know, playing a video game or something like that. And I said, "Can I have a go?" And they went, "Oh, can I have a go? Can I have a go?" And I just didn't understand like what's wrong. And I realized it's, like, oh, it's my turn. And I'm like, you don't ask. And yeah, so if I was like, let's say here, I was like, "Oh, can I have a go?" That makes sense to me in my British head. Whereas whereas having a turn, like that doesn't feel as natural to me. Right. So yeah, they've made fun of me for a number of things I've said over the years and the way I would say things.
I will conform. I promise we'll start talking on topic in a second. I will conform to most things. I in my daily life, I usually say soda nowadays because I've been so accustomed to not say pop. But the one thing I will never conform on. Sucker and lollipop are not the same thing. A sucker is like a Tootsie Pop or a Dum Dum, like the spheres, the little ones. A lollipop is the swirly one, the flat one. They're different. Everybody everywhere, I know everybody everywhere else in the world, not everywhere else in the world, America calls them lollipops, and people in other countries call them totally different things. But everyone everywhere else in America calls all of them lollipops, and I say nay. They're different. This is the one thing I will stand by. They are not the same thing. And then my one last off-topic comment before we get into the topic is, if you like murder mysteries and also classic authors, everybody go check out Edgar Allan Poe's Murder Mystery Dinner Party. It's a web series on YouTube, and it's good, and it has so many of those like classical author references. So if you are a reader like that, and you like murder mystery and kind of goofy comedy, you're gonna like it for sure. And it's Shipwreck, which is related to Team Starkid. If you guys are Starkid fans, it has both Joey Richter and Lauren Lopez. So definitely. All right, we can actually get on topic, which once again, thank you so much. Thank you so much for stepping in, because like Moose texted me this morning and was like, "Hey, I didn't even think about the fact that I'm in a different country right now." So thank you so much for being here with me for 40 minutes at 1 a.m. I really appreciate it. But yeah, let's talk diversity representation. And I know we've touched on it a little bit in my previous conversations, but this is the big one where we really, really talk about that.
Yeah. So you were talking in a previous conversation about how you've noticed things have changed. So I should admit, like, although I do post a TikTok, I think just from listening to the conversation, I realize how much I may not know as much about Ace and Aero TikTok as I thought, because I'm very much a Twitter person, and Twitter is just dying like it's been dying for months, and so I think I've been putting content on TikTok a lot more. So yeah, it'd just be interesting to know your perspective on like what you think or what you feel has changed.
And I do want to say, we've talked so much about TikTok that we by all means can talk about the community as a whole and other platforms and stuff like that, but I've seen so many more people of color especially coming on here and talking about their aspec experiences. If you go back even a year, you only see white people. And I think part of that is because there are some people that are making an intentional effort. Kind of like what I was saying when talking to Abby. So much of this, you have to make an intentional effort if you want change. It's not just going to change because you say that would be nice. You have to go out and you have to do it. And so a big thing for me is I went out of my way to try to increase the distribution of people I followed. So I did something on this last year, I think, where I actually went through every single aspec creator I followed and put them into like the racial categories that they use for colleges and different different criteria and things like that. And I took the percentages and I looked at what percentage do I have that's white, what percentage do I have that's black, and looked at all of the different categories. And then I went out of my way after doing that study and I followed multiple people from each of those other categories besides white because I wanted to increase that percentage and I wanted to increase my scope. And because of that, I think I naturally see a lot more people of color talking about aspec issues. And I also did that for age because a big thing is, you know, partially because it's a newer identity, partially because it's TikTok, you see a lot more younger people on here talking about asexuality and aromanticism. And so I also did a little study where I went through the people I follow and I did an age distribution. And I definitely found, I think, the most common age among aspec TikTok creators was 20. And pretty much in early 20s is where it settled, and you really didn't see a ton above 25. And so once again, I went out of my way to follow some older aspec creators. So while yes, I do think overall it has gotten better for sure, I think a lot of the reason it's gotten better from that I've gone out of my way to try to take in more content that is made by these different minorities within the aspec community. And I definitely recommend it for anyone that wants to broaden their scope or just support these creators. And I always suggest a good way to do that is Cam has made a wonderful doc that lists all of the POC aspec creators he has been able to find, not just on TikTok, but on Instagram, on Twitter. It's a very, very long list. It's in his bio. I also have it in the link in my bio, and I encourage any of you, if you have a link tree, to put it in there as well. If you just go through and see who's on there, follow some people, you can very quickly increase the number of POC aspec creators you are following.
I just saw just a comment that my local age group is a majority 30-plus-year-olds, and that's a really interesting thing because I agree. I have definitely noticed that TikTok is on the younger end. It makes me feel old, and I'm only 34. You know, so that's the thing. As I think, and I will be talking about this a bit later in terms of like there's TikTok and there's what's outside of TikTok and how like when we talk about activism, how that could look very different in both places and why it's really important to also look outside of TikTok. I actually wanted to ask you. So thank you for sharing that. I wanted to ask you when you were looking through the list and looking through the different creators. Let's say looking at race and ethnicity, for example. How did you feel looking through that list?
It was very eye-opening because I think it's just something that I have had the privilege of not having to think about. You know, it's something that I didn't consider. You know, you hear people saying uplift Black voices or POC voices and things like that. And a lot of times you just make the assumption, oh, I do that. I'm an ally. I help with those things. And you don't actually look into what you are doing. So I think it was really eye-opening because I always assumed that I was doing that. And then I looked at my following list and it was at least 75% white. But maybe even more. And also recognizing that that was a good percentage compared to so many people was just really shocking because the fact that my 75% white was considered good comparing it to other people's following list is crazy. It's just really mind-boggling. And like I said, it inspired me to go out of my way and follow some others because originally I didn't do that study with the intention of this. And then after I saw it, I thought I have to improve this number. And that is when I took the initiative to find more creators. And some of them just make really, really wonderful content. And actually Moose, who was originally going to be on this segment, was one of the creators that I found through that intentional search. I had never been shown any of Moose's content. I'd never seen them tagged in anything. I knew nothing about their work, even though they do so much great work. And there's, I'm sure, several others that I found that do a lot of really, really great things on here that just don't get the benefit of the algorithm or aren't part of my little corner. Because another thing to remember too is there's kind of corners of aspec TikTok. And so I feel like I know all the creators, but the second I step outside of my corner, there's so many more that I haven't even discovered.
Yeah. I think sometimes looking at that work could feel uncomfortable as well, because then you realize, oh, I thought I was this, but actually, no, I'm not like this at all. The algorithm, yeah, definitely plays a part. We see this in TikTok in general as well, when we look at not just, so looking outside of Ace and Area TikTok, thinking about the kind of engagement that POC creators get. You also, the followers numbers, the fact that who sets the trends, but also who do we see participating in the trends, and who do we therefore see erased by that. But it's more than the algorithm as well. It's also just the people, because we also see this across other social media platforms. We see this in terms of, for example, when we see interviews of aces, and I should mention that I'm not somebody who's AroAce, so I'm coming from the perspective of somebody who's ace and engaged with the ace community. It's stuff we see in many different places and not just TikTok. And one of the things I know we've spoken about is actually even looking at the awards themselves as well, when we look at the list of nominees. So I don't know if anybody else who's listening to this, watching this, had actually seen this, but it is a very white group of people when we look at the nominees. And it's probably the things that you've talked about in terms of the fact you've had to actively go and follow these people and actually look through your list as well. And I think that, yeah, when you do see, because also think about when you do get new creators on the platform, the ones who are more likely to get a huge following quicker are going to be white creators. It's going to be young creators as well. Most likely to also be able-bodied creators too. So yeah, that's the thing. And so this is why I think looking at who you're following is one way which you can look at that and then think about the content you are receiving. But I think it's also a thing where you need to look beyond that too, because it's a symptom of a bigger problem, isn't it? I have seen activists talk about this. This includes people like Yasmin Benoit as well. She's spoken quite a lot about this. I've also seen activists such as Courtney Lane. She is one half of the Ace couple. She does many other things as well as that. They have both spoken about how they have experienced discrimination within the community. So Yasmin specifically misogynoir, Courtney specifically ableism, as visible people who talk about their experiences as well. So it's the fact that it's not just people within the community, it's also visible people in the community, the well-known activists who will also face discrimination from their, especially when you're multiply marginalized as well. And so this is, as I say, looking at follower count is only one symptom of the bigger issue, which is racism. It is ableism. So what can we do about that? So one group I wanted to mention is ACAR, so ACAR. That is Aspects Committed to Anti-Racism, and this is a group that Courtney actually initiated. We had just seen, around the time it was created, a discourse on Twitter about the fact racism in the ACE community. It's a very old conversation. That's the thing. It's a very, very old conversation, and we haven't necessarily seen a lot of change. Basically, Courtney thought, well, just talking about people to follow isn't changing things significantly. It's not a bad thing to talk about, and it's not necessarily a bad thing to address. But we weren't really seeing significant change in trying to tackle racism in the community. So ACAR was set up. There is a Discord server. That's for people that maybe just want to drop in and out if they can't make in-person, live meetings, for example. So there's actually one happening right now. There's a discussion online. So we do have things like the book club for the book Me and White Supremacy. If you've not seen that book before, the reason why it was chosen is that it's a 30-day sort of prompt-based book, which means that you don't just read one thing and then move on to the next thing. It's actually getting you to work through like the things that you do, the actions you have in your life, with different prompts. And that process is uncomfortable. That's the thing. It is an uncomfortable process. But the hope is that that leads to long-term sustainable change as well. So we do things like that. There's also the book Refusing Compulsory Sexuality by Shonda J. Brown. I've read it recently. I haven't quite finished it, but it's a really, really good book. That's another book we've also covered. And yeah, there's not meeting basically whenever we see issues within the community, because this is the other thing that's really important about ACAR as well, is that we'll see something happen on Twitter, and then we might be by ourselves, and we might maybe speak to somebody else who might know about it, but we won't necessarily know what to do as a community to act on it. So ACAR is this place where people can come together to problem solve. So I don't know if you've seen in like the last, I think, week or so, Yilin Wang, who is a translator, she's AroAce as well. Some of her translation work was used by the British Museum, so stolen by the British Museum, used without crediting her, which is so typical of the British Museum, right? Taking things taking things from
government. It's, yeah.
But it's also particularly the British Museum. It is full of artifacts that the British have taken, is the thing. So, yeah, but basically she has not been credited. It's been handled incredibly poorly as well. So what ACAR are doing, actually, as we speak, are meeting to talk about what to basically, they want to draft together something they want to send to the museum as a response. So that's the thing. When things come up where we go, what do we do about this? How do we address this? We come together as a community to talk about it and problem solve. And I think that's, for me, that's one of the most important things about ACAR, is that feeling of, I don't know what to do, I want to do the right thing, and talking to others. Yeah, so I'm just seeing in the chat, let's not forget how far the Denmark meme went. So that was something that was raised in ACAR and was talked about. It's when we see things in the community and we discuss it. The other thing I also find very beneficial with the group is to, actually, if we do want to learn something or want to ask questions and we're worried about like asking a question to make us look racist, there, and then people go like, okay, let's actually address it, let's actually look through it. I should say we're not anti-racist educators, we're just a group of people who we feel this is very important to us. So yeah, if you were to just Google ace couple and ACAR, it should hopefully come up with the webpage which has the episode where, so the Ace Couple's a podcast, Courtney and her spouse Royce, yeah, basically one of the episodes is about this, and if you go to the webpage, it has a link to join the Discord server. I hope that'll be easy enough for people to find, because I couldn't think of like a really obvious way to share it on TikTok. Yeah, basically just, because I know that if you were ever to do the awards in the future, Rachel, I would invite you to talk to us about that in terms of like, okay, so this is an issue that you found this time, what can we do to problem solve in the future? Because as you said, you're seeing an increase in diversity of creators, but we're not necessarily seeing that actually reflected in the awards in terms of who was nominated. So what can we do about this in the future if you were to do something like this again?
If I do this again, I'll have more time and planning, and I want to take all those suggestions and incorporate it. And I know it's a bit past over the time for me to announce the award, so I will in 1 second. But I do also want to address that it's important to have those conversations, and that it is okay to be uncomfortable. If you are not uncomfortable, you are not going to grow, and we are not going to fix these problems. And I think that if we accept the fact that you're going to be uncomfortable and that is okay, more people will be willing to have those kind of conversations.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the other thing is, oh wait, you were going to announce the...
yeah, and I'm still talking about it, so I'll go ahead and announce it, and then we can continue the conversation, move into the next topic. Yeah. All right, but it is time. I'm going to announce the funniest ASpec creator. We have 2 winners. So the winners of the funniest ASpec creator are Asexual Memes and Your Mom is Aspec. Yay, and chat go wild. I know, it feels so weird to like be waiting for chat. But yes, congrats to those 2. Both make real content. Both definitely content that I have laughed at, so I definitely think that is well deserved. And thank you for the gift, Casey. I appreciate it. And yes, to what we were saying, I also want to add with the diversity thing, because we talked about race and ethnicity. We talked about age. We talked about ability. I think some other things to talk about that maybe we don't think about as much is gender, particularly male presenting people. Because usually we think of male presenting people as the people that are more fortunate or benefited in society, and that's true for society. But when it comes to the ASpec community, I would actually argue that male presenting people probably have the biggest disadvantage because they are always told that they should be these sexual beasts and dominating and a ladies' man and all of these things. And there's also not as many male presenting people in aspec spaces to show them that this is an option. So I definitely think that's a big thing to think about. And along with that, something else I've been looking into is also polyamory is a big thing. I know a couple of polyamorous creators, but really not a ton. And that is something that is very interesting to see represented, especially on asexual TikTok. And I think Ace Dad has done such a wonderful job of showing that experience of being both polyamorous and asexual.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I've had those kind of conversations outside of TikTok with people in person who don't realize that. I remember having a conversation with somebody who said, "Oh, but I'm poly." I'm like, I know other polyaces. I could probably think of at least maybe 2 or 3. And just to go back to your, because I do, when we look at the community surveys, when we look at gender, there was one a few years ago where I remember it was like 10% men, 30% under the non-binary umbrella, and then 60% women. I have done maths right. Yes, I can still do maths. But I would say that I would agree with that, and there are certain things that men do face, male presenting people, in terms of the expectations around masculinity as well. But when we think about visibility, there can be white male presenting people do benefit from well, if I say basically they are still very visible is what I would challenge back with, to be absolutely honest. So that I would still challenge that.
Yeah, and they are still, of course, visible. That is definitely true. I think it would be interesting to hear more of a perspective of less of just talking about the generals of asexuality and aromanticism from male presenting people, but really hearing about that experience with that gender, because I think we get a lot of content of people talking about what it's like to be aspec and a woman, or what it's like to be aspec and non-binary, but we don't hear a lot about the experience of what it is like to be aspec and a man or male presenting. So while I do think that, of course, they always have that visibility and advantage, it is something that we could discuss a little bit more and just be able to hear a little bit more insight into the different experiences. Because really, that is, in the end, what diversity and representation is about, is hearing different experiences and different ways you can be part of a demographic.
Sure. I would say that maybe this is maybe what I've observed off TikTok, but I have seen discussions around masculinity and asexuality. I remember one of the ACE conferences, at least one of them, maybe, one or maybe 2, but at least one I remember did a panel about masculinity and asexuality as well. But the thing is that I do absolutely see a point in terms of, like, if we look at gender, also argue the same thing about other perspectives as well.
Right.
And it is, and I do recognize that with as I say, the stereotypes of men and women, it is hard. I think it is harder for men to come out as ace. But interestingly, you can also get this erasure with women as well, because I've had this personally. It's this whole thing of, oh, well, isn't that just normal for women? So there's erasure from that perspective as well.
That is very, very true. I do want to address a comment really quickly. I'm actually doing 2 segments with Sarah, because I was supposed to do the diversity segment with Moose and then do this next coming segment with Sarah. But Moose unfortunately had to drop out last second. So just letting you guys know, for those of you that think I am behind, we are not, I promise. We have Sarah here until 8:40. So that's why I did the one announcement, and then Sarah will be doing our 5th announcement at 8:40. So I just wanted to clear that up. I know I didn't explain that very well. So yes, it was a very last minute thing. And once again, Sarah, thank you so much for jumping in and having this extra long discussion at 1 a.m. or now 1:30 a.m.
That's absolutely fine. I just saw it as, I'm up anyway, sure. Sure.
You told me you were going to watch until your segment. So I was like, you know what? It's before. So I figured you'd be able to. Definitely. Yeah. All right. And I guess we should probably then head into our next kind of topic, which, and I know we've already discussed this a little bit, but moving forward to the future of aspec activism and awareness. So not just how we can increase representation and visibility in the future, but also just the general direction we think we can take the aspec community as a whole.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, to kind of get off the previous discussion, I think more intersectionality is absolutely key. Something you are seeing internationally, which is really great to see, is more resources in different languages. And that is thanks to all the different amazing activist groups around the world. So if you actually want to see a list, if you go to the International Asexuality Day website, there's a whole list of people. And actually that's why that day exists as well, to have the international perspective, because it has become very Western centric, very Anglophone as well. So it is still quite a narrow perspective. So one group I actually do want to highlight is Aromantic and Asexual Support PH, or Philippines. They're a wonderful group that I'm on their Discord server. I'm Filipino, by the way, if anybody doesn't know that about me. But it's something that I've been able to find a space. And I do remember seeing an anecdote somewhere, not necessarily linked to their group, but this feeling of, well, if I'm in ace spaces and I'm surrounded by people who are mainly white, then I am not gonna. There are people I can't find I can relate to. There's also different queer frameworks and different cultures. There's different language as well. So from what I got from conversations with those activists in the Philippines, is they do use the words asexual and aromantic, but there are different terminology also used as queer terminology as well. But they have also used some English-based ones as well, bearing in mind that one of the national languages of the Philippines is also English as well. On top of this, we also can't forget about the influence of colonialism on queer experiences around the world. So I managed to get a statistic here. So in 67 countries around the world, LGBT plus people are criminalized because of who they are and who they love. So this is a quote from the Kaleidoscope Trust. But in half of those countries, or half of the 67 countries, homophobic laws originally passed during Britain's colonial rule have yet to be repealed. So that's just Britain. And bearing in mind with the Philippines, they don't have a national law to protect the rights of LGBT people, but they were also colonized by the Spanish 500 years ago as well. So that's the thing is, there's a few things I picked up on there, is thinking about intersectionality in terms of the fact that people have different cultures, different experiences, but also understanding where they come from. So that's one thing in terms of what I think in terms of, and as I'm saying that from the perspective of somebody who is Filipino, intersectionality in lots of different ways, as we've already discussed as well. And I think being kinder, I think, as I say, to those the activists who are multiply marginalized, because the thing I have seen, for example, Yasmin, is so much more expected from her because of who she is and the amount of misogyny she's experienced from the community as well. So considering that she's done so much important work for the community, she's not necessarily treated kindly by the community as well. So that's that side of things in terms of like activism as well. One thing I would love to see more in the future, to be honest, is for us to kind of get out of our community a bit in different ways. And, people like Yasmin have been able to do this by working with different LGBT charities in the UK. So, for example, she works with Stonewall, who are like the most well-known LGBT charity we have in the UK. So she's got a project with them that looks into the lives of asexual people in the UK, which is really exciting because its impact it could have on things like policy. I'm just looking at, there is a quite Western base as a Filipino. Oh, cool. Sorry, I just didn't realize that I do actually have a Filipino in the comments. Woohoo. Just very exciting to find us.
Back that Filipino group. I do follow them on Instagram. They do absolutely amazing work. Yeah. And obviously you know more than I do because I'm not on the Discord or anything, but just from what I see on Instagram, they post so many wonderful things. They have a lot of really, really great insight. Definitely go check them out if you have not.
Yeah, they've done some really cool sticker designs recently that they only deliver like nationally, and they won't go international because understandably would cost because it is very expensive. But they're really, really cute. And they've also done some resources, I think, in Tagalog recently, which is one of the languages. There's many different languages in the Philippines, but that's one of them. Anyway, sorry, what was about future activism? Yeah, so something I just find is that I don't just find this on TikTok, and I also could be completely wrong in terms of my view of TikTok because I'm not as, I think, immersed in the TikTok community as other people like yourself are. The thing I find is we kind of like to stay like this, and we don't necessarily go out of the community as much and reach out to the community as much. I wouldn't say that not everybody's like that. I've seen other activists who have gone out the community, as I mentioned. Yasmin, there's also Marshall Blount, who's known as Gentle Giant Ace. He is on TikTok, but he does a lot of very good activism. He managed to get Ace Week recognized in his state as well. For me, because I am from a STEM background, I do talks in about asexuality in STEM settings. So recently I was at an engineering company, and one of the questions was about like, how do we design our cities to be more inclusive? And one of the things I talked about is we do not have towns and cities and other places that are designed for single people. We just don't.
Yes.
And just to kind of talked about that a little bit. So it's about that, and even going to things like the medical care settings. I know of a researcher called Stella, and I've forgotten her surname off the top of my head, who's also Ace, and she talks about asexuality inclusion in healthcare, because I think staying with our bubble is really nice in terms of having a community and having that support, but we need change, and we need change in lots of different places.
And the healthcare thing brings up actually a project that I am going to put out soon. As you may or may not know, I love my surveys and I love my little stats and kind of having people answer quick questions and being able to really put together a comprehensive study. And something I am planning on releasing soon is looking at the ASPEC influence in the workforce and really seeing in the different fields where we have ASPEC people either currently working or studying to work in those fields, because I think it's really, really important to have that influence as asexual and aromantic people in every aspect of life. And the workplace is a really, really great way to do that. In healthcare and medicine. For those of you who don't know, although I broadcast my public life, so you probably do know, I am a nursing student. And so a big thing for me with my asexual identity, especially recently, has been exploring what it means to be a healthcare provider and an asexual person, because it really is an interesting intersection of identities and of paths. And even just within my first week of being in nursing school, the amount of people that knew absolutely nothing about asexuality truly baffled me. So that lack of awareness, I think, is quite dangerous, especially in a medical setting. I think the more that we as ASPEC people integrate ourselves into different fields, the more we are going to help improve that education and improve policy as well. Like you said, every single area is very important.
Yeah, absolutely. And I have definitely talked about it from a medicalization perspective because of being in the sciences myself. Right. And I should say I'm specifically a science communicator. That's what I do. I bring asexuality into my work in lots of different ways. So what was I going to say? So what we found in the National LGBT Survey published 2018, so this is a government survey, which is a shame because there's a lot of very, very good data in there. And then I'm seeing some really awful things that my government are currently doing in my country. It's been a very strange Pride Month for us. It's not,
tell me about it. Have you seen the presidential candidates?
I knew. Yeah. So actually, I should say the most recent thing we have is the government has been saying for months, that they were going to publish guidance of how to work with trans students. And we had a leak from a tabloid of what it could look like, and it's awful. It's awful. It's going to really, if it's true, it's going to really harm trans youth, and it's just, So anyway, that's there's that. So
all over the place, and I'm sure you've seen. I mean, speaking from once again the American perspective, where I don't know a lot about what other countries are doing, but if you look at America right now, the absolute mess that it is with trans bans, absolutely crazy, and there are so many people that are moving out of states like Florida, Tennessee, Kentucky, Texas, all of those places, and they're moving north because they are in a situation where their kids or themselves or other family members are no longer safe in the state they're residing in. And it definitely is sad to see us moving backwards in that way, but then when we talk about the support groups that you found in the other government documents, it shows that there is hope, and there are people that are trying to move us in the right direction.
I hope so. I mean, it's sad that publication was from 2018, and nothing's really been acted on it really, which is just really, really sad. I was going to say something and I completely forgot. Oh, the thing that you just mentioned, but also reminds me why it's really important for us to step outside the community. We have so much in common with other queer people. And that's so important. I think about that all the time, like how I have similar experiences to bi folk, to lesbians as well. We are all like fighting the same sort of things. So it makes so much sense for us to go outside our community as well. Yeah. If you're interested in the STEM stuff though, I know of at least one publication that refers to asexual people within the physical sciences. So I'm always happy to talk about that. But I also would recommend the community surveys when looking at data, if you haven't done so already, because there's actually quite a lot of stuff and really, really good research done by ACE researchers, actually. So that sort of stuff does give me hope, actually, if we want to talk about hope.
Definitely. And I think the biggest thing before we go ahead and wrap things up and announce the next award is the idea that we need to stop being afraid. Because I think a big reason why we don't leave our sphere is because we're afraid of other areas of the LGBTQ plus community, because we've had cases of Tumblr and Reddit and all those other platforms that had so much aggression and hostility that we're now kind of scared to leave our space. But I do think that we need to put aside those fears for the potential that we have in that community. Because if we reach out, we can really do some great work. We can completely change the future of not just ASPEC activism, but LGBTQ plus activism and improvement as a whole. And so I think we do need to kind of take that big step and think it's scary, but it can very well be worth it.
Yeah, absolutely. And also, especially when you can pair up with people who can offer skills, like people who can design a website, for example, who can give it their time, and that's their way of supporting our community. And it means that we can focus on what needs to get done. Because with this kind of activism work, there's always so much to do, like little things like that, little bits like admin, email, website. There's always so much to do. And so it makes sense for us to go out the community and get that kind of expertise to help us.
And people who don't work on it would not believe how much work, even putting this together, like a little TikTok award thing, has been so much work for me. And that's a small thing. So when you think about a big project where you're working with multiple parties, it's a lot. It really, really is.
Absolutely.
But yes, we probably should announce the next winners. So we can go ahead, and I'm sure you have the list, but the winners for the most creative ASPEC creator.
Yeah, so we got 3 winners here. We have Your Mum is ASPEC, which I'm glad to know that your mum jokes are still there since I was since I was at school.
I love Christina dearly, and Christina's got us your mom jokes.
And 18. And click for Caroline as our second and our third winner. So congratulations. Yes, and I'm just going to start clapping like this and hope that other people join in. Please do.
Clap in the comments. And Sarah, thank you so much for joining me here. I know it's a really weird time zone and it was hard to figure things out. So thank you not only for joining me and having such a wonderful conversation, but also staying for 40 minutes. It's really, really lovely. And I will say, you kept talking about how you didn't have a lot of TikTok knowledge, but I think that was so wonderful because you had so much knowledge that a lot of people that focus primarily on TikTok activism just don't have. So I know you taught me a ton of things in these 40 minutes, and I'm sure you taught a lot of people in chat a lot of things as well.
Oh, thank you so much. Yes. Thank you so much for having me. This is my way of doing like a TikTok live for the very first time as well. It's very interesting.
Of course. All right. Thank you so much. And I will hopefully see you later. Good night, too, because I know it's late.
Yeah, I'm going to bed. Night.
Yes. Bye.
Bye.
Alrighty. And we're on the final discussion topic. So let me go ahead and invite Tasha. Just sent the invite and we're connecting. Tash.
Hello.
Hello, darling. Sorry, I know we're a little bit over, but that's okay. I've stayed mostly on time.
Okay. Hi.
Hi. You're so okay. I swear to God, when I say this, I do not mean it in a condescending way. But like, you're one of those people where I just want to like pull a Southern middle-aged lady and be like, bless her heart. Like,
I love that.
Like, I feel like all the time I'm like, Tasha, darling, like my love, like you're so cute. Like, I think you're fantastic. So yes, like I said, that was not supposed to be condescending or patronizing.
Did not take it that way.
I just think you're very lovely.
Oh, thank you. I think you're lovely.
Thank you. But you're a calm version of lovely. In my defense, I think I've been pretty put together this live, but ask Cam about our last live, Cam and Abby, and they will not say the same. All right. Anyway, we are talking about, for our last topic, the expansion of the community through awareness and education.
Yes.
Which is a bit of a big topic, but it's a fun one.
It is, yeah.
Definitely. And I think so many of the things we've already talked about kind of feed into this. Talking about being able to reach out to different demographics, talking about how using TikTok as a platform has allowed us to reach out to more people and have more people discover what it means to be asexual and aromantic and realize that they are asexual and aromantic themselves.
Yes. Something that Sarah was saying towards the end kind of got me thinking. I think it was the reaching outside of our community thing. It had me thinking about the type of content that we make in terms of kind of educational content, because I feel like we're, as a community, kind of constantly caught in the 101 phase of like,
Yes.
this is who we are and this is what it means and here are all the definitions of things. And on one hand, you feel this need to kind of break out of that because you're like, I don't want to be constantly making these basic videos, because then you can never get to move forward in a sense. But at the same time, you're like, well, there's always going to be people who are new to discovering the community and you want them to have those resources. But I find, just even thinking about the other kinds of content I consume, that if I'm just scrolling on TikTok and I see an interesting video and I don't quite know about the content, but it's intriguing to me, necessarily, matter if it's like the 101 thing. If I'm interested, then I'll go and seek out more information. And so I think it's also, there's like a lot of value in just making content about being an aspec person, and then educating through those kind of experiences rather than like a sit down, here's everything kind of video. And so it's hard because you want both of those resources out there to be, one, eye-catching and like move on beyond just the basics, and then two, make sure there are still basics there for people to find. So I thought that was something interesting that Sarah kind of triggered in my mind, because going on to my current hyperfixation of K-pop, there are certain bands that I don't necessarily know about until I stumble upon a video on TikTok about them, and it doesn't tell me who each of the members are and here's the name and here's like their role in the group. But like, if I find a video where like it seems like they got a fun vibe, then I will go seek out that information about each of the members. And so it's like hard thinking of what kind of content is going to be kind of attention grabbing for people who haven't seen this community before.
And sometimes the more nuanced content is more attention grabbing than the 101. And I also think the 101 really, really stunts creativity, because we as a TikTok aspec creator community really bounce off of each other. Like, how many times have you seen a video and you get an idea for 3 more videos just because somebody brought up a topic? When we keep repeating the same basics over and over again, we don't have that. It's been so overdone that we're not thinking of new things. And that is something that I have definitely experienced recently. Is I used to get all these video ideas just from scrolling through my For You page, and I don't have that anymore. Sometimes it's difficult for me to think of new things to talk about because there just isn't that innovation. And so definitely I think there is a balance. I think it's possible to do both. And that's what I aim for as an ace and arrow creator. Is I have the basic things on my page, but I also try to talk about more nuance. And I think you can have levels. You don't have to do just one or the other.
And I think, especially, I think I've learned a lot from creators on this app who do that kind of nuanced content where they're just like, hey, I had this experience that related to my identity, and I'm like, I never thought about that before, because A, it's either not something I've experienced myself, or B, I've just not seen content about that before. It's like so interesting for me when I find something in our community that's like, I haven't had that before, because I feel like a lot of the information out there is just the same two things circulating again and again.
Right, definitely. And I think another thing too, that is really interesting to address, because we keep talking about how things have improved on TikTok, what we can do on TikTok. And while that is very important and very interesting, I think when we're talking about expansion, a big thing that's important is thinking, how can we move to other areas? Not only other apps, but into real life. You know, how can we take what we're doing on here and make it bigger?
Yes. I know my personal dipping my toes into the community was on YouTube. That's where I first discovered just asexuality in general, but like content about that. But something I'm really passionate about as a budding writer myself is like fictional book content, and how asexuality is starting to creep into the mainstream as well, which I think is a huge step, because it's not honestly something. I think honestly, up until like last year, I don't think I really saw any books that had ace characters in them, and now I'm seeing so many that are in like upcoming book announcements and things like that. And that's going to be huge, because, you know, people who are going to a bookstore now can just pick up a book that they saw that they liked the cover of, or it was recommended to them, or it's on like a New York Times bestsellers list and they heard it was good, and not even know that there's aspec representation in that book, and open it up and read about a character like that and discover that for the first time. So I think there's like such an opportunity there to capture a group of people who otherwise wouldn't have seen that content online.
Definitely. And I think it's great that it's becoming a natural part of storytelling. Because I feel like before, while there were books with aspec characters, you either are buying a book that is about being aspec and you're buying it because there's an aspec character, or you're not getting aspec characters. Whereas now there's that middle ground where it's a book and it happens to have an aspec character, and you happen to be able to learn about it without going out of your way to do so.
Yes.
And I really hope that television could follow that trend, because, you know, I am a big TV gal. I live my emotions through television. And obviously we have things like BoJack Horseman that were such a milestone, and we had a couple of things after that, but really aspec representation has kind of hit a standstill when it comes to television and film. Anything we do get just kind of feels like a repetition of what we had before, and aromanticism we have next to nothing. And so I would love to see some of what's happening in the novel industry to start happening on film. And I have really, really big hopes for Heartstopper season 2.
Yes, I'm very excited.
Because, you know, get into any of that, but I have a feeling that we're going to get some great aspec representation from that, and I'm hoping that that could potentially open the door for that to become more common within that form of media.
Yeah, I'm hoping the trend of successful aspec characters in novels tends to, I'm hoping that blends into TV and film as well. But I've noticed kind of like a regression almost. I feel like we started out well with TV characters who were ace, where we got characters who had full stories who were ace, and then I think other people, like other TV shows, saw that and were like, oh, should we be including an ace character, and then like just added one in because they could, and like, you know, that like special episode type thing of like they're there for a definition and then they're not actually having a character arc. So it's weird that it's kind of actually
we all know
regressed.
We're talking about sex ed.
Yes.
Every single one of us here knows we're talking about sex ed.
Yes.
And if you've been following me for any amount of time, you know I have beef with that scene. But you're 100% right. Definitely. Yeah. I'm hoping that we're moving in a good direction, and I have a lot of hope for that, especially like what you said with the novels. And film tends to follow writing.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping that will be true with this. And then, of course, continuing to talk about expansion, I think another really, really important thing that, you know, Sarah was talking about is inserting the aspec experience into general LGBTQ plus groups, not just keeping it to our community, but helping to bring that to other areas that may not know as much about it and can have the resources to help promote it. And a big thing for me for that is that on my university campus, I am part of the LGBTQ plus nursing club, and I am like the only person in there that's aspec. I don't even know if they've ever had an aspec person in it before, but I've been able to bring such a new perspective because obviously a big thing we talk about is not just nursing and caring for queer patients or being queer, but just healthcare in general and the way that we talk about the LGBTQ plus community. And to bring in an AroAce perspective into that conversation completely changes the game. And not only does it bring up new topics, but it also kind of shows how similar we are. And that's a big thing too, is so many people don't realize how similar our issues are. And so I think just by inserting yourself into some of those bigger queer spaces, you can really make a difference with ASPEC awareness and education.
Yeah, I completely agree. I actually, as a freshman, I intended to join on my campus, but I walked to the club on the day that it was having its first meeting, and I stood outside the door and I didn't go in. I just felt like I wasn't supposed to be included in that kind of a space, just sitting there looking at the outside the door. And it wasn't until I don't think I went until my senior year. And then I finally went, and I ended up giving a presentation for 1 week on asexuality because the group leaders opened it up to let anyone who wanted to give a presentation for a week. And I gathered from that presentation that a lot of the people in the room had no idea anything about asexuality. And so it was super important that I did talk, and I could have given that talk 4 years earlier if I had the courage to walk in that door. And I think it's a lot of times we feel like we don't belong, and so we exclude ourselves in a sense from these kind of spaces, and we kind of carve out our own space separately. And I think it's going to be scary and tough, but I think we do have to sometimes step up and say, hey, no, I am also going to be included in this space, and kind of assert yourself in that kind of thing.
Right. We need to push through that fear, and we need to have confidence in ourselves, because a lot of times as aspec people, we are our worst enemies. Yes, we get hate from society. Yes, we get hate from the queer community. But a lot of times we are getting that pressure from ourselves, and we are making the assumptions that we aren't going to be accepted or that we don't belong. And if you have that attitude, you're not going to belong because you're convincing yourself that you don't. So it's very important to have that confidence and recognize, I do belong in this space and my voice is important.
Yes.
And it's definitely, it's what we do with that opportunity. And another thing too, if you're trying to get involved in queer spaces and you're not really sure how to go about being aspect or if they'll accept that, it never hurts to just be honest and right out say to them, like, I am AroAce, or I am asexual and biromantic. Do I have a place here to be able to share my experiences and to be able to hear about other people's experiences? That is very much what I did when I joined LGBTQ plus nursing, because, and this is probably different for other schools, but for me, I go to a pretty big school. And so we have festival at the start of the year, which is, if you guys have seen Pitch Perfect, where they have like all the booths out, we have that at U of M, like all around the diag. They're all the booths on campus. And LGBT nursing was a festival, and I straight up walked up to them and I was like, hey, I'm a freshman nursing major and I am aromantic and asexual. Is this a club that would be a good space for me? And they were so welcoming, they were so nice, and then I wasn't as scared to show up on the first day because I had already talked to the leaders, they had already assured me that I was welcome. I had already had that encouragement that it was going to be a good idea and it was going to be a good place. And so definitely, if you have any doubts, go ahead and just question, talk to the leaders. You can very much get a vibe just based on how they interact with you.
I think also, I feel like sometimes we have this burden that we put on ourselves as aspec people to be an educator, and like what I did where I volunteered to give a presentation in this club. But I think even existing openly in a space is often enough to open people's eyes up to identities that they hadn't previously thought about. Like, even if you just introduced yourself and your identity on the first day of club and then never speak in that club again, you've already done more than you could have.
Right, definitely. And that is another important topic that I think is always important to address, is that you don't owe anybody anything with your identity. Just because you have this identity that isn't spoken about a lot doesn't mean that you have to be the sole educator. And like you said, sometimes the best education, the best awareness is just simply existing and putting yourself in those spaces. So definitely, as great as it can be to really immerse yourself and give all of these presentations and do all that stuff, you don't have to. And you should do what you are comfortable with. But I do encourage you to try something out of your comfort zone. Yeah. Even if that's just, like you said, walking into the building and going to the first day of a club. You don't even say anything. Just the fact that you showed up and you presented yourself there, you're doing more than you were doing yesterday. And that's what's important, is pushing our boundaries and pushing ourselves, not only to make ourselves more comfortable in our identity, but also to help our community as a whole.
Yeah.
Definitely. All right. And I think it's about time to announce our final winners.
It is.
So the final category is most helpful aspec creator.
And the winners for that are acedadadvice and chaotic.good.bard.
Yay! So exciting. I know it's, once again, it feels so weird to clap in silence, but great job, everyone. Those are, I believe there's about 15 winners in total. So those are all of our winners. Thank you guys so much for all of your nominations and all your voting. Congrats to all of you. And also, it's important, even if you were nominated, congrats for all of that, because that means that there are viewers out there that thought of you and said, this is a really great creator. And I definitely encourage anybody who's watching this or sees these posts to follow these different creators, and not just the winners. You know, go through the nomination list and follow all those different people that were nominated, because clearly somebody thought that they were a great creator. I think they're all great creators. I definitely have checked all of them out. And you definitely should too, because you never know. You might end up finding your new favorite creator. You never know. And yes, I think just the final words too, before we let everyone go, is just remembering the impact you have. I think that kind of sums up this entire stream, you know, talking about the change in ACE content, talking about the rise of Aro Talk, talking about incorporating different people, whether it be allo arrows or people of different demographics, and then talking about how we can continue to grow in the future and the importance of that growth. All of those things all connect back to the fact that you as an individual and an aspec person have an impact. And you have power. And just by existing and being a human and being able to embrace these parts of your identity, you have an inherent power that nobody can take away from you. And once you realize that, you can do so many wonderful things with that power. So I hope you took away a lot of really, really great things from today. I know I definitely did, from having discussions with all of these diverse, wonderful people. But if nothing else, just remember, you are powerful and you have an impact. And thank you, Tash, so much for joining me. It was great to do that. Thank you, everybody that watched. And hopefully we'll see, maybe this becomes an annual thing. Maybe we will do these more frequently. And I would love to, even if it's not just for the awards, I would love to have some more focused discussions like this, where I invite people on. Because I know I have my silly live streams, and of course I'm going to still do that in the future. I would never give up the chaos. But I would love to have some more focused ones as well, because I think we got so many great discussion topics out of this. So yes, tomorrow I will be making posts. Geez, I've been talking too much. I will be making posts of the winners on both TikTok and Instagram. So if you want to check those out, repost them, definitely feel free. Once again, Tash, thank you so much. Thank you to all of my other guests and the people that watched. And I will see you all later. Have a great rest of your Pride Month. goodbye if I can figure out how to end the live. Perfect. All right. Bye, everyone.